Hey, this is Matt Urtz, the Madison County historian. We are still working to document the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and how it's impacted Madison County. We are talking today with Graham Garner of SUNY Morrisville. Graham works in the communications department. Graham, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Happy to have the conversation.
So talk a little bit about, SUNY Morrisville is a college in upstate New York. We don't have to ask what you do, but talk a little bit about back in March, things changed so rapidly, but colleges tended to be a little ahead of the curve. So talk a little bit about your process of how that came about and your decision to eventually go to distance learning.
Sure. Well, obviously everybody's world gets turned upside down by what we're going through. As far as how it all started for us back in March, it really started around the time that a lot of SUNY institutions were having their spring break. And as it turned out for us, a lot of the information that was really starting to suggest to us about how serious this was going to get was really in that week before we were going to be on spring break. And so for us, it started with really advising students, strongly saying, hey, maybe you should reconsider that international travel, to don't travel internationally, to reconsider going to certain hot spots, even in the States. And so we were already trying to kind of gear up and advise people. And as that happened, the SUNY system, the chancellor's office, started to indicate to us, okay, you might need to be thinking about moving online. And that came in pretty early, right in that break period for us. And along with that directive came the option for campuses to extend their spring break an additional week, just so that they'd be able to have the planning for how they might shift to remote learning. And for initially, we thought, well, we think we know how to do this, what we're going to do, and we'll be okay with just 1 week. But even early in that first week, we realized, you know what, maybe taking that second week is a good idea for us, and we're really glad that we did. It helped us, the timing of all of that, really, to already that students had planned to go elsewhere. A lot of students were not going to be on campus. We always have some students who remain during break, and so that there was that. But a lot of students had already made plans to not be in Morrisville, not be on the campus. So that kind of helped us in a way to make that plan, to have that shift to remote learning. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. How did, from both ends of the spectrum, how did professors respond? And then how did students respond to being the distance learning? Because I'm guessing there was the initial struggles and then you kind of try to figure it out, but how did that go?
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, it was really just that we didn't have any choice, right? We knew that, we already been basically ordered by the state, regardless of whether we would have made the decision ourselves. There already was an order in place that we were going to have to shift to remote learning. And so that our concern at the time, of course, this beyond just the that safety issue of how do we get all of our students off of campus, how do we get all of our faculty and staff out of the offices and in their homes or other alternate work locations so they can work remotely. It was, how do we actually do that work remotely? And as we went through that, for students, we had concerns about do they have a laptop or other equipment that they would need? Because not everybody, frankly, has that. And even if they have it, do they live in a place where they can have get internet access? And I think that if I had to pick one struggle that was the hardest to address, it was internet access, reliable internet access.
That's been a theme through a lot of the conversations we've had.
Yeah. And then I think. And it's interesting because you can talk about New York and what kind of coverage there is, whether you're talking about your cell phone or getting high-speed internet, and it's spotty in a lot of places in upstate. But even if you're in the city, you can be limited. If you're in denser areas, there's still some limitations to being able to get access. So that was really a big concern for us with students, and frankly, for our faculty and staff. We have some key staff and faculty who do not live far from the Morrisville campus, but where they live, their homes, they don't have high-speed internet access. So trying to address that, I think, was probably the biggest challenge, in addition to just how do you convert a curriculum online? How do you do labs online? I was actually amazed, considering what an applied learning campus we are, how well a lot of faculty really adjusted their teaching. There were plans that I thought, how on earth can this program ever be converted online? The faculty figured out a way. And I know that for a lot of us, it was, we aren't looking for perfect, but we're looking for good enough to get through this spring. That's a little bit different than talking about what that looks over the longer term, going into the fall and perhaps further ahead.
Have you guys talked to students about whether this is something they want to continue or if they want to get back on campus?
Yeah, so we did surveys of our faculty and staff as well as students. The SUNY system has administered similar kinds of surveys to try and gauge, what worked and didn't work during the spring semester. What is it that you want or need in the fall semester? And looking ahead, we did a lot of asking questions about that. And, whereas in the spring, it was kind of a forced thing, right? We had to do it quickly and there wasn't necessarily a lot of opportunity to debate about what the options were. Going forward, there's a lot more discussion about that and there's a lot more varied opinion, right? So we have people who are all over the spectrum of opinions about what this might look like in the fall. We have people who say, I absolutely can't teach or learn without being in person, face to face. And we have people who say, I absolutely don't want to teach or learn in an atmosphere that isn't completely online. I need to have that physical distance to feel safe. And those are valid points, right, on either end of those poles. But throughout the spectrum, there's a variety of opinion about that. How much face-to-face, how much online, how much physical distancing, and how much hygiene and mask wearing and all that other stuff. And those have been things that we've discussed and debated pretty much since March, and especially over the last several weeks and last couple of months as we've been developing our plan to return to campus.
Forgive me, I'm not familiar. Did you guys have on-campus summer session this year, or was it pretty much digital?
It's all online. Yeah, we did summer all online. Our summer classes tend to be pretty limited, so it's not a huge number to begin with. But especially where we were still working with SUNY system to develop what our plan looked like, we just had online only for summer.
Okay, so talk a little bit about in the last few days, you guys have actually come out with your plan for coming back to school in the fall. Talk about the process talk about the plan itself and the process of coming up with it.
Sure. So the plan, it's interesting because SUNY system asked us about first submitting a plan by June 5th, which we did. And we waited for some feedback. And a couple weeks later, we got some kind of additional checklist of things that they wanted us to address, all SUNY campuses, that is. And so we completed that, and that was turned in by June 30th, that was turned in, I think, June 23rd. And then we were expecting to hear by June 30th what the results of our submitted plans would be. And it ended up being a few days later than that. I think it was on July 2nd, late in the afternoon, where we actually got our first response to our plan, asking for a few clarifications and follow-up, which we worked on over the holiday weekend, resubmitted those couple of changes early this week, and then got the go-ahead late on Monday, and then pushed the plan out. So that was Monday the 6th, and then on Tuesday the 7th is when we publicized our plan and promoted it. And there sure was a flurry, right? 24 hours after we published that, we put it on our website, we pushed it out through email, we put it on our social media channels, really just trying to publicize to everybody, hey, our plan's been approved, here's what we're hoping to do. And we had lots and lots of questions that come in. And they've slowed down a little bit in the last couple of days, but I think what's really important to recognize with a plan like this is it is just ever evolving. You can't really just set a plan today and say, this is exactly what we're going to do, and conditions aren't going to change. Because even from, those different intervals when we first submitted the plan on June 5th to when the checklist requirements came in to when the reviews came in, there have been so many changes. The travel advisory that happened for New York State is one of the later larger developments for us, which is this limitation. If you come from a certain state with a high infection rate, then you have to quarantine for 14 days in New York State before you can go anywhere. Well, that presents a challenge for us for students who come to us from some of those affected states. How do they quarantine in New York State if they're coming to the campus? Are they going to quarantine on campus? Are they going to quarantine somewhere else before they come to campus? Those are kinds of questions that we are trying to address. Not only that, but that list of states, changes, right? I mean, every day it seems like there's a new state that's added, and we don't know how that list is going to evolve over the rest of the summer.
So when you guys, and I guess the other question would be, do you guys have provisions in place for, because I'm assuming you have staff that have school-age children, and we still don't know what the school plan is.
Right.
And I think Colgate's plan, if I read it correctly, actually has a thing in there that if schools don't open, we may not have people on campus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we haven't addressed that part specifically, but to your very point about, there are so many unanswered questions still. We've done our best to answer the questions that we can. And there's kind of, you can talk about the large shape of it, which is essentially saying, on August 24th, which was our original, before all the pandemic started, we had an academic calendar planned for this fall. And we actually, we talked about starting a week earlier. We talked about maybe changing dates a little bit, but ultimately what we landed on is the same calendar, which is classes start again on August 24th, but we're eliminating breaks. So we don't have breaks through the fall. Normally we have an October break. There's some holiday weekends that we would have normally had a break. We're eliminating those breaks so that we can do two things. One, minimize how much travel people have in and out of the community. And two, to get as much in-person instruction to take place before we might have to leave campus again, because we recognize that that's a possibility. If all goes well, best case scenario, everyone will remain on campus until right before Thanksgiving break. And if there's any remaining work that needs to be done, there's roughly about a week of instruction that would normally be left after Thanksgiving, as well as final exams, final projects. And what we've just said is go home for Thanksgiving break, and we'll complete the rest of the semester online. Any other projects or whatnot you have, we'll do that by distance means. So we're really trying to front load as much as we can all of the in-person work in the first part of the semester, knowing that we might not be here. Best case scenario, we're going to be here till that Thanksgiving break, but possibly have to leave campus again earlier, just as we did in the spring.
Okay. Do you guys have different protocols because you're part of the SUNY system versus being a private college?
Yes, we do. So there are directives that we have to follow that are part of the state and part of the SUNY system, but there's also a lot of individual adjustment, right, based on communities and whatnot. So how people handle residential facilities, how people handle screening and testing. There's kind of a baseline that's been set for all SUNYs, right? That's kind of what we had to submit in that initial plan, that checklist, is you need to meet all of these baselines, and then beyond that, what else you might do. So, and that makes sense, right? Because if you are an institution that's in a denser population city, like if you're in the city or maybe you're in Albany, that might be different than if you're, in Madison County or if you're further upstate. So, yeah, there's baselines that everybody's doing, but there's also some other adjustments based on where you are and what kind of institution you might be.
Are there any programs that may have to be paused because of you're constantly working close to people, or you guys have a lot of animal-based programs, husbandry and stuff like that?
Yeah. So for a lot of our faculty and staff, just in the spring and over the course of the summer, most people have been able to be removed from the campus. We have some essential staff, and as most campuses do, there are some staff you have to have on campus to tend to facilities and make sure that everything is still operational at a minimal level. But for an institution like SUNY Morrisville, where we have animals and crops and so many other things, there have to be people that tend to those, right? Animals still need to be fed, crops still need to be watered and harvested and so forth. So we still have people who are on campus doing that. What's been challenging for us is we don't have the student help that we normally would have during the summer to help. So we're cognizant of those programs and making adjustments there. And we don't have all of those answers yet. We're still trying to figure a lot of that out. Another one I think that's interesting for us is our nursing program. It's one of our more popular programs. It's one of our largest programs. And nursing is absolutely something that's a lot of face-to-face. There's only so much that you can do through online and through simulations. And so there's a lot of that we're doing, but there are some clinical things that have to happen face-to-face. And typically, clinicals in the fall semester don't start until October, and they can run into December. So that's one thing that we're trying to figure out, is how clinicals are going to work, and in particular, how those various facilities where students might do their clinical experience they have different limitations now. So it's not the same game as it would have been in previous years. So figuring out the timing of that, the types of facilities, all related to the type of programs, it's all a challenge. But again, I've continued to be amazed by how our faculty have adapted, how our students have been willing to make those changes, and also frankly how the community has responded to that. And it seems like there's only so much, you got to take like one bite at a time, right? You got to kind of have the scope of this big thing, but you just got to go a little bit at a time. If you try to think about the whole thing, it can be overwhelming. And frankly, try to plan too far ahead, it's all going to change. There's just too many variables that can come up. So we try to really establish principles that we operate by and standards that we stick to, but remain most of all adaptable and in conversation with each other. Because if we keep communicating, I think that's an important part. We've done a lot of collaboration we use Microsoft Teams, and there are lots of other tools out there, but we have regular meetings that are open to the entire campus. Anybody who wants to participate, we do those right now twice a week. When all of this started, we were doing them every single day. And then we moved to, and that was including weekends. Then we moved to just during the weekdays. Then we moved to 3 days a week. And for the last several weeks, we've just been going twice a week, but I expect that's going to ramp up again. So, and then there's lots and lots of other groups that meet in between, but being able to have that kind of collaboration, I think is really important. So people can hear each other, talk to each other, see each other, share files, share chat. There's just so much conversation and so much information that has to be exchanged and constantly updated.
One other on-campus thing that at least intrigues me, because I take part, Copper Turret is a restaurant, and you guys are under all those guidelines. So again, we have a program called History Where You Eat that in the summer of 2019, Carrie was nice enough to take people through the kitchen as it was working. And I think about stuff like that now, and I'm like, man, I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Right.
Again.
Yeah. I mean, that's hard too, right? Because there's operations that we're used to. I mean, we're used to having a lot of people on campus, right? In addition to our students and our faculty and staff, we have a lot of visitors who come through. We've brought school children to campus. We've brought other kinds of visitors like that class you talked about, the Copper Turret. And those are all adjustments that we have to make, right? So for example, Copper Turret part is included in that reopening plan, that return to campus plan. If you go and read that detail, I believe what the plan right now for the Copper Turret is to open it to 50% capacity and follow those kinds of regulations as any other restaurant in the region would, according to the phase. So, but we all know that those phases, they can change too, and the requirements for those can change too. So we're just trying to pay close attention to the developments and adjust as we can.
Hang on just a second.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
One final question, and then I'll let you go. Can you kind of explain what this impact this might have on the campus in the future? And I realize that's really broad and really hard, but there's some things a lot of places have seen that they go, yeah, we know this is going to change because. Yeah. Is there anything like that for you guys?
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that this has changed everything for everyone, everywhere, in some way. What I think that this has done for us most of all is it's forced a conversation that we already were having. It's just forced the timetable ahead, which is moving things online. We've talked a lot about that before. We've said, okay, should we be moving programs online? Which programs should we be moving online? What parts of programs should we move online? Is it better to be online or is it better to be in person? And there are benefits and drawbacks to all of that. But we basically forced everything online in March because we didn't have another choice. And it was good in that way because it helped us learn how to collaborate more online and how to deliver and learn online. And now I think part of what we're seeing that's a little bit different from the spring moving into the fall, and I think this is similar to the rest of the conversation going forward, is what things are we going to continue to keep and develop online versus those things that we're really going to say it's better to do this in person. And where it's both are possible, both are good, we can have that kind of flexible hybrid model. So it's definitely changed things for us that way. I think part of the interim question for us is what happens with the in-person experience. because we recognize that even if we move a lot of things online out of necessity and there's a convenience, there's a lot that we miss out on. I think we look as a society and think, we're glad that we can connect with people through video and that we can collaborate online, but we also miss being together. We want to be in spaces together. We want to enjoy each other's company. It's a different kind of experience. And that's true of students, right? Of college students, they go to college not just to learn, but they go to college to socialize and to grow in that way. So how we figure out this interim, right, until things are safe again for us to gather that way is going to be difficult. But I think this has also proven to us that there is not a world where everything goes online and it's better than every opportunity of being in person. So for us, it's really being able to sort those things out. And I think we're going to see, we already see it, right? There's a craving for people to want to be back together.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we can safely do that and afford that, people to do that, that's what we want to be able to do.
Graham, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. As I said, we might be reaching out to you in a couple of months to see how the on-campus experience has changed and what's going on. And hopefully we can talk to some folks on your staff. Please stay safe and we'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you, Matt. Take care.
Yep. Bye now.
See ya.